Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Beyond the Classroom podcast with OnCourse. On today's episode, we have Hushrav, who is an automotive engineering student at the University of Warwick in the UK. Hi, Hushrav. How's everything going?
I'm good. How are you?
All good, all good. It's been a little while now since we worked on your application. You're at college. You've had some time to settle in. How's your experience been so far?
It's been good so far. I've just finished up my second year, so I'm on summer placement right now. So work from home today because I have hybrid working. So yep, that's
Fantastic.
basically what I've been up to.
What internship are you doing this summer?
So I'm currently interning in advanced product creation at Tata Motors. So they have a European technical center, which is where all of the designing part originates from.
Okay.
So I work in project management there as an intern.
Fantastic. And how's that going so far?
So it's been really good. It's actually my second year with them now. I worked with them at the end of my first year, for a similar period through the summer, and it was a really nice experience. I was on rotation through a few departments that time because they wanted me to sort of get a hang of everything, not sort of commit to one department very early on, which I found really good. And as a company as well, I mean, really good work environment. There's a reason I voluntarily picked them for my second year as well, which not a lot of
Yeah.
people do. And they were also happy enough with my work to have me back for a second year, which is again something we don't find very commonly. So no, it's been a really good experience working with them so far. And the goal is at some point maybe it after I graduate converts into a full-time offer.
No, that yeah, absolutely. I feel like, if you find something you like, that's always a good first option to have. I think two internships with the same place, if they're happy with you, usually that will convert.
Yeah.
So good luck for that. But do you feel like Warwick had a big part to play with placing you in this internship, or did you figure this out by yourself?
Um, so if I had to be completely honest, Warwick had no part to play in me actually getting the internship, but
Yeah.
the convenient thing was my place of work happens to be on Warwick campus, which is the best part of it. So I don't know. It's not something I can particularly answer whether seeing Warwick on an application helped or not. I guess it would have. Um,
Hmm.
but the sheer convenience, especially in first year of me living on campus and just being able to walk to work, was really good. There's no correlation between why they're on campus. They're just on campus because that's where they found real estate to build on. So it's a
Yeah.
brand new building I work in as well. It's only about 3 years old. So it's a state of the art purpose built facility which is on Warwick campus. So that's pretty much the only correlation between the two. Otherwise, I applied through my own sort of own network, and it moved from India to eventually working in UK.
Fantastic. And if you had a choice, would you rather stay there or would you rather come back to India?
No, I think as an engineer, I'd definitely rather stay here, undoubtedly.
Fair point. Fair point. Okay, so that's good to hear. And since we are on the topic of Warwick, you've had 2 full years there now. That's a
Yeah.
big chunk of your undergrad degree already completed. What have your thoughts been so far? What do you think of the school? What about the classes, the resources off campus for your program?
So I think I'd find it really tough to say anything negative about my time at Warwick so far. You'd really have to nitpick to find something because it's been a brilliant experience. One of the reasons I was very keen on a place like Warwick was firstly it was countryside.
Yeah,
I didn't apply to any city colleges anywhere in the world because I didn't want to be in a city again because I lived in Mumbai for all my life basically.
yeah,
So for me it was I wanted to move a bit away from the city for a while, so that worked out well. I love the location, where it is and everything. I live in a town that's about half an hour away by bus, so it's not particularly close, but it's not too far either. It's a convenient distance away. And in terms of my classes, it's perfect. We start specializing in our courses second year onwards, and my class sizes are not more than 50 people at best. So really small class sizes as well. Most of my seminars and stuff are like less than 10 people even. And it's a Warwick, especially in UK, has a really good balance between academics and extracurricular. So they encourage you to be a part of sports clubs and societies. They have a very strong culture of societies that way. I think the most societies in the UK or something, if I'm not mistaken. So
Hmm.
no, a really good place to be at. I mean, I've enjoyed every bit of it so far. And the good thing is, this it sort of remains balanced through your third year and fourth year as well. So it's not like you can only do all this in your first year. There's I've
Yeah.
found, in fact, I'd say more time to do these things in second year. It's been a bit more hectic, but if you find time, I mean, if you want to make time for it, as they say, you always find the time to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Warwick is a popular choice in terms, at least in terms of kids applying from India.
Yep.
A lot of that's a very well heard of name, and a very desired name in that sense. It's not easy to get that condition, but if you do, it becomes a first choice for a lot of people.
Yep.
I guess I'm just being, looking back at my time, let's say last 10 years or so, working with kids. Um, I feel like a lot of people apply to Warwick for their economics or for their business program or
Yep.
maybe their political science. Um, you're one of the few kids we had who looked at it from an engineering point of view.
Yeah.
And it was very good for engineering. But what have your thoughts been in terms of the resources they have for
So
engineering?
my thought process behind Warwick was it was partly based on a gamble in the sense that I knew what the facilities were. I just never had the chance to see them in person, which becomes tricky. Um,
Mm,
I think Sneha would have known. So I applied Imperial, Warwick, Bath, and a few other places.
yeah.
Obviously, Imperial and Warwick. I didn't get into Imperial, but even if I did, I'm not sure if I would have picked it solely because it was a city campus and I didn't want to go to a city. And the reason I picked Warwick over any of it, and I probably would have picked it even over Imperial, is Warwick is something called WMG, which is short for the Warwick Manufacturing Group. Now, this is basically it's a few $100 million worth of investment into the university, which
Mm,
basically brings industry level manufacturing facilities, study facilities, and all of that to Warwick. So the building I spoke of where I work in is a WMG owned building, which is why it's
okay.
brand new. And there's like a few other buildings like this. They have a lot of industry working in them. So we have Rolls-Royce testing jet engines. We have a jet propulsion lab and all of that stuff. Um, we've got state-of-the-art facilities and basically anything you name to be. And after I came here, I looked if any other place in the UK had something like that, and no one comes close in that regard. So I would almost go so far as to say if you can wrap your head around the fact that Oxford and Cambridge might have slightly more prestige and Imperial might have slightly more prestige in the name, I'd argue in terms of facilities and in terms of teaching, it would be hard to beat Warwick with what they have right now. I mean, WMG is it's a one of its kind investment in facility, and it's brilliant the kind of opportunity it gives you. So I think that was my reason for picking it. The building I work at now, it's called the NAIC, the National
Okay.
Automotive Innovation Center. I never knew that would be my future workplace because I never knew Tata worked there. I didn't know that was their office. But for me, seeing Warwick itself, I was like, yeah, they have a building called the National Automotive Innovation Center. I'm sure there'll be car companies and stuff I can work with and I can have opportunities with in that building. And it was like I said, it was based on a gamble. I hadn't seen, I hadn't had to, I hadn't physically had the chance to go there and experience it, which obviously local British students do. So for me, it was a bit based on pictures, but I think it was a gamble that paid off, and I'm very, very happy with how it turned out. So I think for that reason, yeah, Warwick Engineering, as you said, people don't. It's not the first course that comes to their mind when they think of Warwick, but I'd say, in if not already, in a short amount of time, it'll be one of those courses.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I feel like, it's one of those schools which needs to be going on more engineering lists.
Yeah,
And since we're on this topic, and since you have, a lot of people tend to pick the broader engineering majors like a mechanical, like an
yeah,
electrical, maybe a computer engineering. Um, you've picked automotive engineering, which is
yeah.
a more niche engineering major. What have what made you first of all pick that instead of something broader? And what have you found specifically for that program? I believe like Warwick has a racetrack on campus that you guys are pretty big on. Um,
So we have a race team, yeah. We don't have a race track on
okay.
campus, but yeah. So I'll run you through my thought process. So,
Yeah.
like you said, the conventional choice if you want to
Mhm.
get into something of my career is to do mechanical. It's the safer, sensible choice per se.
Yeah.
But the way I sort of rationalized it is, firstly, I've loved cars in a non-mechanical sense when I was a kid, and since I grew up and I had a better understanding of physics and whatnot, since then it's also been in a mechanical sense. So at one point when I was doing my application with Sneha, I was very interested in aerospace, in vehicular aerospace more specifically. So we applied to Aero for a few places. Midway through, I was recommended by the dean of Georgia Tech's aerospace school, who I knew personally, and he spoke to me and he said, "Don't do aerospace at undergrad because the chances of employment are grim, in especially in
Mhm.
US." So, and over time, I also became drawn out of aero. During my application process itself, I was like, I like it, but I'm not sure I can see myself doing it for 20-25 years more. And then obviously I ended up asking myself, what do you see yourself doing for 20-25 years? And the answer was working in the automotive industry, be it in an F1 team or maybe a proper manufacturer like whatever, Tata, Mercedes, Audi, BMW. So that first of all tilted me a bit more towards automotive. Just the sheer confidence I had that I know I'm going to work in this for a long, long time. So I'll never
Mhm.
lose interest in the industry itself, if that makes sense, because it's something I'm passionate about. It's not an academic passion; it's a passion I have as a person, which is very
Yeah.
hard to fall out with. So that was one reason, and beyond that, um, people tend to overestimate how much automotive limits your scope. There are a lot of things you can work in with an automotive engineering degree. You can get into most manufacturing companies that don't even have to be automotive manufacturing companies. I worked in Aero for a month last year when I was on placement. My boss in Aero does not have an aerospace degree. He had an automotive engineering degree. So it's a very flexible degree in how many spaces it allows you to work in, which is not something you typically think with a degree that is a bit niche. The issue with aerospace was you only work in aerospace once you have an aerospace degree. There's no other option beyond that, which wasn't the case with automotive, which is one of the reasons I picked it. And the modules, I compared the modules on the Warwick webpage initially when I was applying between mechanical and automotive, and I just found automotive to be a bit more relevant because it was a newer course. It was designed more recently. I mean, still 15-20 years ago, probably, but still recent compared to what the mechanical course was. So things are a bit more up to date. Like they teach you about vehicle safety. We have an EV mobility course in fourth year and stuff, which is obviously massive in the UK and massive in all the car companies across the world as well now. So very relevant and pertinent information in the automotive course, I
Mhm.
guess, which is what push me towards it. And it is an upward trend. More universities year on year are offering automotive engineering as an addition to mechanical. So I think that trend would speak for itself as to why it's so popular.
Yeah, yeah, no, no, and I feel like it's one of those things which, when you actually talk to a lot of people about it, it comes across as very interesting in a
Yeah,
very natural way, because the product is something everybody uses,
exactly.
so I feel like it's got that attachment, that just that innate attachment.
Yeah,
And given that, again, staying on the same topic, given that you picked a niche major,
yep,
now why don't you tell us from back when you were applying to college, and you didn't just apply to the UK, you also applied to colleges in the US.
yep.
um, do you want to talk to us a little bit about how you positioned your application so that it would be a good fit for automotive?
So this is a tricky question to answer because, as I was saying, and Sneha would know everything about this.
Mm,
She was my counselor through the 2 years. I didn't just apply to automotive, so I applied automotive to a few places. I applied aerospace to a few places.
mm,
I applied mechanical to a few places. So I got into all three of the options in different places. Got rejected from a couple as well. Imperial was one of them.
yeah.
Um, so there were a few rejections in that regard, but the general sort of idea was to make myself seem mechanically inclined, because it's hard to show a specialization in automotive in your application, if that makes sense. It's something I would very highly, now that I'm here in an automotive course, I have many ways of telling someone how they could get a
Yeah.
specialization. A good way would be, if someone who wants to do automotive listens to this podcast, says, work in a garage, work in your local garage in India. The skills you learn, it'll be for free. You won't earn anything. The working conditions might be very, very average and subpar. But the sheer mechanical knowledge you'll just gain out of working with a spanner and nuts and bolts
Yeah.
is knowledge they do not teach you on the course, and they do not teach you in your workplace. You'd be astonished at, we have about 300 engineers, and I could make you a written guarantee that 200 of them would not know how to operate a simple hammer and bolt, which is scary for an engineer. But these things set you at such a higher standard when you eventually come to industry, because you're sort of expected to know how to use these things. And then the machinery gets high. You have pillar drills and bandsaws and everything, which they expect you to know how to use given you've done engineering, except that's
Mhm.
not how it works. And especially given, if you're in UK, in A levels, they have things like, they teach you all of these things in A levels. They have, I can't remember, it's home science or something like that they teach you in. So they actually know how to use all of this equipment, which we don't necessarily have in India. So
Yeah.
they're already at a higher point than us. So get as much experience as you can on hand. You're not going to get an internship in Tata or Mercedes before you go to university, but if you work in a garage, that does you the world of good. But as for my application, we, like I said, we sort of centered it very mechanically. So I spoke about in my Common App and my what was it called, the UCAS application, my personal statement. That's what it was. We spoke a lot about my love for cars and Formula One, and how I'm mechanically inclined towards that. I used to run an Instagram page that used to sort of explain aerodynamic developments in F1. I did that purely out of passion. It was, I started way before I started my college app, so it was
Yeah.
just something nice, organic I could add on to my college app.
Yeah.
Another thing was, Sneha and I, we built this self-cleaning robot, which we sort of brainstormed for a while, and built that out. So that sort of showed a bit of creativity, showed that I was good with building things, because that's what you want in an engineer, and stuff like that, really. So very, very simple things. And then obviously, in terms of academic requirements, you've got to show that you're somewhat decent at physics and math. I wasn't a 7-7 student, but by the end of it, I was. And I guess that's what they want to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I think academics, that's basically the thing which gets your foot in the door, right? And
Exactly.
that's what they then after that they're going to look at all the other stuff you're going to
Exactly.
showcase. So absolutely, I think that's a nice little point you added at the end over there, because it's easy to get lost into
Yeah,
some of the activities and maybe internships and things like that.
exactly.
But no, I think you're right. I think if somebody has the opportunity doing that internship at a garage, especially for this sort of course. It's a great
Yeah,
point. But even if you don't, showing that you have that inclination towards mechanical
exactly.
engineering, even as a general broader
Yeah,
concept, is definitely a good idea. So it's a good point over there. Okay, and I also thought I'd ask you. Since again it's also kind of related to the last question. You applied to colleges in the UK, you applied to colleges in the US.
yeah.
um, I remember at the time that you were choosing, by when you hit that Warwick condition towards the final stretch, you were very sure about it.
Yeah.
But what before that, what made you make up your mind between the UK and the US?
Oof. Um, tricky questions. My one point was, I had lived in the UK for 3 years. I don't
Mhm.
remember anything from when I lived there, but it almost, I don't know, weirdly, subconsciously just felt right going back to UK.
Mhm.
It was also a place my parents are familiar with because they lived with
Okay.
me, and they could sort of, in a way, tell me more about the place, prepare me better for the place than they might with US. But conversely, I also had the advantage in US, because in US, the college I was eventually going to pick if I didn't get to Warwick was 10 minutes from where my uncle used to live. So in that sense, he would have been close by as well. Now I would have had a similar experience. But yeah, one thing for me was, the first sort of thing was UK just naturally felt right. Secondly, UK is the home of motorsport. It's where F1 was born. If there's any place I'm ever going to get a chance to work in from F1, I have to live in the UK. There's no other choice. Even if I went to US, got into an F1 team, I'd have to relocate to UK eventually. 9 out of 10 teams, all teams in F1 minus Ferrari, are based in the UK. So
Mm.
and also just car companies in general are based in the UK. So if there's a place you want to be in for this industry, it's got to be UK or Germany. Really, I wouldn't pick any other country to be in. And beyond that, it was, I'm sure that might have changed now, and I hope it's changed now for the better. But the political sort of tension in US that time was, it was something that bothered me. Not
Mm.
particularly the politics itself, but rather the things with general safety and school shootings and all of that. It was, I wouldn't say I was actively worried about being a part of it, but it was there at the back of my mind. And that sort of thing, and healthcare in the US as well. The day something happens, something goes wrong, in US and in the UK, you have the NHS. They cover everything for you, and you don't pay a penny. So, in terms of places to settle in as well, initially, it seemed like
Mm.
UK was the better idea. I have changed my thoughts a bit since then. I am more open to a move to the US in the future now, um,
Maybe like to
because
live there, or maybe for a master's degree.
both possibly, but especially to live there for sure and to seek employment in the future. I'm a bit more open to the idea now, but initially, I think those were my reasons. So
Okay.
that's why I predominantly was swung more towards UK. And also, one big difference was no US college offered automotive engineering, which was academically a huge sort of
Yeah.
implication.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? With the US, the engineering majors are usually much broader,
Exactly.
because even within engineering, there's a flexibility the same way that they would have
Yeah.
like in a liberal arts program.
Exactly.
So I think that's, and just on an academic, very primary way, I feel like that was an interesting point between the two
Yeah.
countries. Um, no, but I think no matter what the decision was, I think the good news is that it's worked out
Oh yeah,
well,
for sure.
right? And so the good news is there's no regrets on that front.
Exactly.
The course has gone well. It's not over yet, but
Yeah.
at
Halfway there.
least we're on the right track. We're doing good internships. Good chance that we'll see you actually working for a Formula One team. Who knows?
Yeah, next year possibly, because
Yeah.
I'm
Have
going to be
you been?
applying to a few teams.
What about the
So,
Formula E?
so Formula E is tricky. Firstly, they don't really run placement programs because they're very small championship. They've just
Yeah.
started. They don't quite have the manpower that F1 tends to have, and there are also teams that operate on a 20th of the budget F1 teams do.
Yeah.
So they just don't have that sort of disposable income to spend behind
Fair.
placements and intern students and whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you think? Just since I brought it up, or what do you think about electric vehicles in general? Not in terms of
So
motorsports, but in terms of like for the everyday car user.
it's always a nice question to ask to someone who works in the automotive industry
Yeah,
because you always get very polarizing replies on it. My
yeah,
sort of thing with it is uh, whether you like it or not, it will be the future. So
Mhm.
be prepared for it. I can't give you a timeline in India as to when will be the future. I'm thinking maybe 10, 15 years from now is the plan, what especially Tata is having, because
Yeah,
not only are they a pioneer in EVs in India, but they're also the ones building the infrastructure for it. So with Tata Power and whatnot. So in that regard, I have a bit of information as to when the targeting will be about 10, 15 years from now. It's public information. But in terms of Europe, JLR personally, which is our child company, we Tata
mm,
owns JLR, so we have a lot of work with them. JLR is going all electric by 2025, which is 2 years from now, so it's not that far. I remember reading about this. I mentioned this thing in my Common app about JLR going all electric by 2025. And I remember doing my Common app. It seemed 2025 was like, I was like, yeah, it's a really long time away. So I don't
and
know
it's
whether they'll ever meet the targets.
year
And
now.
now 2025 is the year after this. So
Yep.
it's come quickly, but the way it's settling in Europe, it does appear that we'll be going all electric within the next 7 to 8 years, really. Especially, you won't be able to buy a new combustion engine car from
Yeah.
factory in the next 3 years. So they're very sort of stringent on it. Even in London, you can barely drive diesel cars in London anymore because of the emissions. So
Yeah, I
the
think
next. Yeah.
diesel seems to be going completely out.
Exactly. So they're
One
going to
of one of
gradually phase them out bit by bit, and eventually the plan is to move to all EV.
yes.
What that'll bring in terms of costing revenue, we're not sure of yet. The expectation is cars will get cheaper to manufacture, but
Mm.
electricity might get more expensive to consume. So we don't know how it'll quite balance out. But in terms of the environment, it's a done deal at this point. All governments, especially in the EU, are pushing for all electric. So if you're working in the automotive industry and you are someone who doesn't like EVs, and a lot of automotive purists, petrol heads hate the concept
Petrol
of
head,
EVs.
yeah.
So if you're someone like that, you're not going to have fun because I haven't worked on a non-EV project yet. So
Yeah.
that's the future.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so I guess you just have to really preserve your older cars.
Exactly.
Um, buy those limited editions now for all the petrol
Exactly.
heads. But no, that's a good point. I think yeah, it is inevitable.
Yeah.
But no, this was really good, Hushrav. I think what we'll do just to close this off is we'll have a couple of quick fire questions,
Sure.
just a
Sounds good.
few fun questions. Okay, so let's start with one which is university related.
Okay.
What has your favorite class at Warwick been so far?
Ooh, engineering and business because I got a 97% on that module. And I quite enjoyed the module. It was like a Shark Tank pitch, basically. And our pitch also got selected for a competition where we won 1.5 grand. So quite enjoyed the module. Very nice way of going
That's a
about
good
things.
one.
Enjoyed my professor as well.
Was that your best professor as well so far at
Yeah, yeah,
Warwick?
yeah,
Or
for sure, for sure. He had a nice way
okay,
of going about things.
awesome, awesome. Okay. What's your dream? I know your dream industry is Formula One, but within Formula One, what's your dream job?
Um, Race strategy, probably.
Okay, fair,
Yeah,
fair.
race strategy.
Okay, and what is your favorite constructor? Who's your favorite?
Aston Martin, but it's Aston Martin because it used to be Racing Point, which used to be Force India at one point. So it all links
No,
back to the fact that it was Force India at one point, basically.
fair enough, fair enough. How old were you when that first happened?
Nine. So I've been
Force
watching
India
it for.
first year?
Oh no, no, Force India's first year was way before I was nine. I started watching since I was nine. So
Ah, okay. Yeah, no, because Force India is like what, probably when
2008, it's been there since. So I was like five that time. Probably.
yeah. Yeah, that's a while ago. But yeah, okay, that's an interesting answer though. Okay, what and like we'll do one last one. What is your favorite two? There's like you can answer this in two ways. What's your
Okay.
favorite sports car and what's your favorite like pass like the regular cars we buy?
I think my favorite sports car and my favorite regular car are the same because my favorite car would have to be a BMW M4, and it's also a car. It's a car I see myself buying in a few years, and it's also a
Hmm.
car I see myself using on a daily basis. So
Okay,
it's something I would
fantastic.
definitely drive to office as much as it would hurt my wallet.
Fantastic. What do you like about it?
Ooh, it's BMW, firstly. It's powerful. It has 6 cylinders. It's inline, sounds a dream. And I like doing a lot of work on cars myself. I've just learned how to tune engines myself. I've got a decent enough knowledge with CAD now to know how to design spoilers and diffuser fins myself. So BMWs are nice project cars to have because there's a lot of things you can play around with them. So something I would never like to keep a car stock the way it is. I'd always like to play around with it myself.
Hmm.
And if you do it aftermarket, it ruins the fun of it. It's like you're sticking on a spoiler someone else made. So
Hmm.
for me, it would be buying the car, playing around with things myself, and I think that's one reason. It'd have to
Fair
be an
enough. I mean,
M4.
if you like those cylinders, you better buy the car soon based
Yeah,
on your
yeah, I know. I will have to.
excellent. But no, but thank you so much for being
No
on the
worries.
podcast. And we'll end the session over here.